This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 159 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. As always, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I've been excited to release this one. Caryl Lyons is somebody that I actually was introduced to a couple of years ago when a mutual acquaintance of ours, a friend of hers, but really more of an acquaintance of mine, Katie Hunt, who also has a podcast called Proof to Product, introduced us when we were talking about starting podcasts. So I already had mine at the time, but Katie was getting ready to start hers. So Katie and I chatted about podcasting, and then she had introduced me to Caryl from the perspective of interviewing her, but it all just culminated in finally getting to chat in 2020 here. And I'm very much looking forward to you hearing this interview. If you couldn't tell from the title, we are talking all about adding corporate events to your roster as any kind of industry pro, specifically as a wedding planner and a venue owner. You guys will immediately see how you can add this to your client roster to impact your bottom line. But if you are a photographer, if you are a caterer, floral designer, even a calligrapher, watercolor artist, doesn't matter, listen in, because if you get creative, there are absolutely ways you can make yourself valuable to the corporate event community. Caryl is, oh my gosh, you're going to see this. She is whip smart. She's been in the industry for almost 30 years. It is crazy, her amount of knowledge. I don't even know what to say. Let me tell you a little bit about her, and then I'm just going to get right into the interview. She's the founder of ROAR Events, a company that has brought to life tons of events, from large, high-tech conferences to exclusive and intimate gatherings. She has over 27 years as an event planner and is using her experience to help new planners make their mark on the corporate industry. She also launched an educational platform for those who want to enter or improve their corporate events planning game called ROAR Playbook. Event planners looking for the perfect space for a meeting, a banquet, or a party can also use her app called Capacity, which is available wherever apps are sold. Guys, this is so important. This is such an important conversation, especially if you've ever told yourself, oh my gosh, the wedding planning market is saturated. I can't book. What's going on with my sales? Everything is saturated. If you've ever said the S word, as I like to call it, not the 4-letter S word, but the S word being saturated, this is the episode for you, because Carol's going to walk you step by step through why you should consider adding corporate events to your repertoire. And I want to let you know that as I release this episode, it is Thursday, January 30th, 2020, and we are all in luck because the ROAR Playbook is opening in just a few days at the time of this recording. Now, it's not an evergreen educational opportunity, so if you're listening well into the future, it's probably not open, or it might be. Who knows? It depends on when you're listening. Either way, go to roarplaybook.com. That's ROAR, ROAR. Playbook.com to either get on the wait list, to join the course if it's open. And if you are listening to this in real time, and I hope you are, for those of you, Caryl is actually hosting a couple of webinars, and I will make sure I put the link in here for roarplaybook.com. Once you hop on that website, a pop-up will come up and ask you to get on the wait list for the webinar. Enter your information to get on the webinar. I will be there. I have a big project coming up. Hopefully, cross your fingers, and I'll let you know about it later. And corporate events are the first thing that I have been thinking about. And so I've privately coached with Caryl a little bit to talk about it. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is, you guys. Caryl is the real deal. Let's go to the show and talk to Caryl Lyons from ROAR Events about how to add corporate to our repertoire. Caryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
This is awesome.
Good.
I'm so excited.
I'm glad. I'm excited too. I know I was telling you offline that I feel really honored to have you on the podcast today. You guys, we made this connection. We were talking, and we had to realize and talk about how back in 2017, which is almost 3 years ago as we record this, we were randomly connected by Katie Hunt, who also has an amazing podcast called Proof to Product. So you should check it out if you want to get in the physical product space for any reason. But we were connected by Katie, and now we're coming full circle, and I finally get the pleasure of having Caryl on the show. So thank you, Katie.
Yes. Thank you, Katie. Definitely.
Well, as you know, I read your professional bio there at the top of the show. So everyone has a decent idea of where you're coming from and kind of what you do in the industry. But I'd love for you to take a few minutes in your own words just to introduce yourself and chat about ROAR events a bit.
Sure, sure. So, one thing that's not in the bio, I grew up in Hawaii. My mom was an event planner. My dad owned a mechanical engineering company and basically built the skyline with all the hotels on Oahu and the neighbor islands. So you can say that events and hotels have been in my blood for a really long time. But shockingly, I went to college, had no idea what I wanted to do. I was thinking about archaeology because I loved Tutankhamun, like crazy as that is.
Really?
And
I like that.
Yeah. And really kind of fell into events when I moved to San Francisco on a whim and started in publishing. And when the internet was literally like just being born, and then went on to the corporate side of things, and then started, let's see, my son is 19 now. And really when he was born, my world just kind of changed. And I left corporate, started consulting, and then started ROAR 13 years ago. And still going strong.
I thought you went from publishing to ROAR 13 years ago.
Yeah.
So you have seen so much being in business for 13 years. Sidebar really quickly. I feel like you and I could have a lot of cool history conversations based on your interest in archaeology. So we'll have to do that sometime.
Yeah.
But
So I've been in the business for 27 years, and which is just a crazy length of time. I mean, when I started on the publishing side, I was at PC Computing Magazine, which is no longer.
What was that?
It was basically, it was owned by Ziff Davis, and it was when all of the computer magazines were coming out. And so I did events for PC Computing Magazine where we were doing incentives. We were doing editorial briefings, which were like road shows. We were doing trade shows. We were doing parties. So we were doing big awards dinners. So, people that kind of know just that tech industry, the biggest trade show of the year was Fall Comdex, which was in Las Vegas. And, my boss and I thought that we were just thebomb.com because we were carrying these brick cell phones, and we just thought we were amazing. And the internet was literally just being born because CERN, this company in Switzerland, is actually the creator of the World Wide Web. And they were winning an award. And so I had to call them to say, hey, are you www? Are you world-wide-web? What's the proper name of this thing called the internet? Yeah, it was crazy. So, yeah.
I can't even imagine what that was like. Did you call them on your brick phone? No, I'm kidding.
No. I called them from my desk phone. But I mean, email was not even what email is now. I mean, we use Lotus Notes. And
that's right, Lotus.
We had fax machines. We would get contracts via fax machines. And when the slicer, you had that thermal paper, and when the slicer wasn't working, you'd come into the office and you would have a 20-page contract that was, all one long stream, and then you're having to cut it. I mean, you carried the event binder, which, I mean, I still like my binder.
Of course.
But it was just the way business was done then is so different than the way business is done now. It was kind of, I mean, it was crazy, but yet kind of peaceful back then because it wasn't all this instant, need it now. You have your cell phone, you text, you WhatsApp, you're literally in constant communication mode
right
now versus how things were back then. It was it's 5:00. Yeah, we're still working, but they're gone. So we just need to wait till tomorrow. It was just a different beast.
You know what I like about your experience in the industry is that it's actually especially because there's so many, and maybe you'll agree. I feel like a lot of folks are getting into the wedding industry. They're starting planning companies or they're photographers. A lot of people are building venues, and there's a lot of education happening for people who haven't been in the industry as long. I'm one of them. I host this podcast. I've only been in the industry for just over 4 years. But what I like about speaking to people like you, and what I think is, I feel like there should be a conference someone needs to create that's like all wedding professionals who've been in the industry for over 15 years because they've seen so many things, including recessions, which I think is really important in a luxury industry, which we essentially are. People spend more money on weddings when they have more money, of course.
Right.
And anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But
we had our best year ever in like 2008, 2009, during the downturn. It was literally,
Did you really?
Yeah. And, and that's because there were a lot of layoffs that were happening, but companies still needed to have events. They still needed to get their brand out there. They needed to get in front of their customers. And so they needed help, but they couldn't necessarily, they could hire a company to help them do it, but they couldn't. It was more expensive for them to keep a person on payroll than it was to bring in an outside entity because, it's like, okay, I'm bringing you on just for this short period of time and then you're done. And then we'll bring you on again for another event and then you're done. They don't have any of the overhead.
Okay. So you're talking about their internal, like a lot of layoffs were happening for those internal event coordinators, event planners. Yeah. So they were hiring you one-offs because all of those folks, unfortunately, got laid off. But of course, it kind of, stinks on the front end, but on the back end, it's helpful for other businesses, which is great.
Right. But what's really interesting now is that now we're, I think dependent on where you are, but this is like the lowest unemployment rate where companies can't, they have big teams. I mean, even within different corporations, they'll have a large events team, but they have so many events that they're doing that they can't do them all. So then they have to hire someone outside to come in and do them. So it's a little bit of like a recession-proof business, so to speak, because the companies always need to have events.
Where are you located right now?
I'm in the Bay Area.
Okay,
San
you're in the
Francisco
Bay Area. Okay.
Yeah.
So lots of companies in your area.
Lots of companies, but surprisingly...
Do you plan out of state?
Yeah.
Okay.
The majority of what we plan is actually out of state.
No way.
So we have like some clients that are local here, but we've got clients all over. We have one that's in Michigan. We have one that's in Denver. So
Colorado.
They're all over. Yep, Colorado.
That's where I am.
So they're all over, and that's kind of the beauty of the corporate event is that you can go and you can really niche down and say like I am only going to focus on events that are in my area, or you can for me like being on that publishing side, we didn't really do anything in the Bay Area. Everything we did was outbound. So we were going to all of these different cities and doing events. So it's kind of interesting. Like when we have one that's local, it's like, oh, okay, this is weird. Like I can just like drive there.
I'm just going to get in my car.
Yeah. It's kind of odd, but, and it just depends. And then, so they might, like a client might say, I want to be in San Francisco. And then the following year, we want to move our program to Dallas, or we want to move our program to New York or Boston or wherever, or London. I mean, we do events all over the world.
Okay, I'm buzzing. We've got to. I'm totally buzzing on this. I would not have anticipated that at all, and I'm not sure why. It's because I don't know anything about corporate events. So this is so fascinating. I cannot wait to dig into all of this. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I think that's like kind of the different. Yes. That's something that's different with weddings is that unless you've niched into being like a destination wedding planner, or you're just, you're a wedding planner in like the Bay Area, you might do stuff in in San Jose, San Francisco, Napa, but it's all kind of in the same vicinity. And it was interesting. A friend of mine is a wedding planner, and she is in, where does she live? She lives in, I think, North Carolina. And she was like, oh my gosh, we did a wedding and it was like, 8 hours away. And she was kind of freaking out. I'm like, okay, why are you freaking out? Like, this is just.
You're like, I was in London last year.
Right. But for me, it's, it's all the same thing. It's just, you need to make new contacts, and, you can potentially have the same team, or you're adding different team members for different aspects.
Right. Okay. Let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
We are, yeah. So I just have this feeling that everyone is feeling the way I am feeling. They have a lot of excitement right now, and they are thinking, okay, I haven't heard anyone talk about this specifically. So you guys can tell from the title, we're talking about adding corporate events to your planning roster. Now listen up. If you are not a wedding planner, this episode is still for you. Here's why. Because you can connect with these planners if you want to add corporate events. Maybe you want to be a corporate photographer. Maybe you want to be a corporate, I don't know what, DJ. I don't know. So listen up, tune in. Like, don't tune us out yet. Especially my wedding venue folks. You might want to add corporate events to your roster too, if you can.
Oh my gosh.
Come on.
Sure.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah. A friend of mine is in, she's just outside of Green Bay, and she has, she's a wedding planner. I mean, she's awesome because she has like completely diversified her business. And it's like, that is like the name of the game. Yes. Honestly, is diversifying. And she has a wedding venue. So I was talking to her. I'm like, okay, so you need to reach out to these corporations, because this is going to be perfect retreat material to have companies come in here and do retreats. And that's your weekday business, because you're not going to get weekend business from a corporation.
That's right.
You're going to get weekday. So, I have photographers that call me and say, hey, you know what, I'm a wedding photographer and I really want to get into corporate. And that's like, it's a different beast. And the biggest thing I think that people need to do is they need to get educated, because, when you're doing for a wedding photographer, it's all about the natural light. Everything is about the natural light. And unfortunately with corporate events, it's all inside light. It's all dark. You need to know how to shoot a general session have still like get all of the colors and all of that come out, not a beat. You don't want the photos to be like really dark. Mm-hmm. So, but you can't be like having your flash go off, all the time, because that's going to be distracting to the speaker. There's so many things that like people can do. And wedding planners, I think, especially now, really need to work on diversifying what they're doing.
Yes. And
finding things like, let's say it's not even that they want to add corporate events. It's what would be something that would go with what you're already offering. As the example with my wedding planner friend, she does, she has her venue, she has her planning, she's doing a magazine, she's doing invitations. So everything complements one another. And she's funny. She's like, I want to get into corporate events, so you need to teach me how to do that too. I'm like, okay, like, that's fine.
That's fine. I'll just do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
I need to know who this friend is so I can bring her on the podcast, because that sounds fun.
Oh my gosh. Yes. She's a hoot. She's hilarious. So it's just really important to diversify. Like, we diversify.
Yeah, same.
So with what we do, we do full service event planning. We do just site selection, which is where we find the hotel for the client. We negotiate the contract. So we do that whole search, and we get paid a commission from the hotel based on the sleeping rooms. And commissions are not a bad word in the corporate space, as it can be a negative in the wedding space, but it's alive and well in corporate. We also We have our e-course, our for corporate event planners. We sell swag, which is the different giveaways and gifts that you would give attendees that would be attending a conference or an incentive. So
oh wait, so you sell the physical, like if I want to, I don't know, a mug or a pen, I don't know what it would be, but you sell that stuff, like those physical products. So if I'm a corporate event planner and I'm thinking I want to gift all of my C-suites executives with XYZ, I could potentially come get that from you.
Yeah.
Get out of town. This is cool.
So all of these things complement one another.
That's right.
We have an app which is a meeting space calculator. So we've created like different tools and different things that it's stuff that we touch every single day. And, if you're a wedding planner and all you're doing is wedding planning, you have all of your eggs in one basket. And that is like the easiest way to go out of business, especially with, just the wedding market being so overly saturated right now, because the barrier for entry for wedding planners is so low because you know what? Oh, I just got married. I planned my own wedding. Therefore, I'm a wedding planner. And that is not true. That is absolutely not the case, but it fascinates me. And then you have all these people that are like so new and they're like, oh, what should I charge? $1,000? It's like, are you kidding me? For like the amount of work that goes into it? Like, absolutely not. But I think the education, even on the bride and groom side, is, it's not there because obviously they want like the best deal.
Right.
And but the new event planner, the new wedding planner they'll take anything because they're really playing that short game because they'll just take whatever they can. And then that hurts the super savvy person that has done weddings for years. But that super savvy person is realizing, you know what, I need to go after, these other types of programs as well. I personally would like some weekends back and, I want to be able to spend more time with my family. But it's just the whole pay scale with weddings is insane to me. Just how different it is, how low it is, and just how easy it is for someone to say, I'm a wedding planner, therefore I can plan your wedding. And I've done 2 weddings and I'm good. Don't need to do them anymore.
I'm good.
I'm
done.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. And you're not wrong. It is a low barrier to entry. And guys, don't hear what we're not saying. If you got started because you did plan your own wedding, we hear you. And we're not saying that that's that you're not a good wedding planner. That's not what we're saying. What we are saying, and this is factual, and I will toe up to anyone who doesn't say this or who doesn't agree with this, but we're saying that there is a very low barrier to entry in the industry, and there are very few across the board standards, and that makes it challenging in the industry to have a price level where people can be profitable, and that it educates our clients industry wide so that we can all be, not that we all need to be charging the same, but some sort of standard and some sort of what would you call it, Caryl? Just a baseline.
It needs to be more of and obviously it's going to be different based on where you're
location.
Located.
Come on.
If you're in Chicago, you're in the Bay Area, you're in New York, you're in Boston, obviously like you're, DC, like your rates are going to be higher than if you are in Ohio.
That's right. Or Colorado, where I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be, it's going to be different. The interesting thing is that the barrier for entry for corporate events is much, much higher.
Okay.
It is more difficult to get into it. But what's fascinating is, especially for the younger planners that, they're all on Instagram, they all might be like getting engaged. So they're seeing wedding planners. They're seeing their work. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And so then they reach out to them to say, hey, we have an event that we want to do. But the wedding planner is kind of a little bit at a disservice because they don't know the lingo. They don't know, they don't know the language. They don't understand that everything for a corporate events is really based on goals and ROI, return on investment. And that return on investment could be, we want to get X number of leads into our funnel for this particular event. Or it could be, we want to make this much, additional income, or we want this many butts and seats that are listening to our talk, or this many, this amount of people coming to our roadshow. So there's goals that are associated with it. And the whole budgeting process is completely different than weddings, because weddings is all about the personal money and people are very, very tight with that. And with corporate, you can look at budgets more holistically, and you can kind of rob Peter to pay Paul. So if something is coming in a little bit less, let's say your food and beverage is coming in a little bit less, but your audiovisual is coming in higher, you can shift money around. Versus in weddings, the bride and groom or the parents don't necessarily want to shift that money. They think, awesome, our budget went from $30,000 now to, $25,000.
Right.
And then you're like, wait, no. I need to do more. One of the weddings that we did, she was actually a client on the corporate side. And we were going back and forth over, I will never forget this, these little card stands, little lucite squares that you would stick the table number in. And it was $20 for all of them. And she's like, you know what? I'm just making the executive decision. I'm like, oh my God, this is $20. Like, this is insane to me. It was crazy. I'm like, because on the corporate side, I'd be like, yeah, I like them. We're getting those. Okay. And, then if we ended up not using them, like just return them or, whatever, I'll use them for another event. But there isn't all of that questioning. You obviously need to be able to understand your budget and be able to talk to your budget when you're talking with executives. And I think that actually wedding planners that get into corporate and get a really good understanding of talking to executives can actually up-level their wedding planning business.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Because now they're talking to, because, probably the parents have, been in the business world. So they're talking to them at a different level and being more educated, and can also they can add that value in. And, so we have our signature e-course, which is the ROAR Playbook, it's a very tactical course. It basically teaches you how to do all the different types of corporate events, how to look at contracts, how to write a proposal, how to budget. Because I have 3 different budget scenarios that I go through with my clients. So it's all stuff that I actually use. And it's amazing, just seeing the students that have gone through the course, and now, corporate is 40, 50% of their business. Some have just said, I'm not doing weddings anymore, or they're being very, very picky about the weddings that they want to produce. And, so it's awesome to see how their world is just changing.
Well, and you said something earlier in this episode, and then also, I think when you and I were offline a little bit here, or no, it was earlier in this episode, when you said that what's going to happen is you're not booking corporate events over the weekends. You're actually booking them during the week. And so for me as a venue owner, in my mind, and of course planners too, but even as a venue owner, I'm thinking, my goodness, I would love to fill up more weekdays. As not at my particular venue. I don't think corporate is a good fit for us, but because we're out in the middle of nowhere, you guys, come on. But for planners, for other venues who are more, maybe they're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area or Chicago, Boston, those places, filling up those weekdays can really change kind of the revenue structure of your business. It's similar to, my husband used to work for an auction. And so, and it traded in mostly heavier livestock, but the heavier livestock paid all of the bills. And then during the week when they had the smaller auctions, that's actually what they profited from, because they paid bills on one hand and then the other hand was where their profit came from. And so anyway, to me, this is kind of the structure. So you can like pull back on weddings, you can be pickier. Maybe that's everything that's paying your bills and running the back end of your business. And then your profits coming from corporate side and whatever else you decide to expand out to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, totally. Because the one thing with, especially like for venues, you'll see that the price so the rental on the venue goes sky high, Friday, Saturday, sometimes even like Thursday.
Right.
But, and Sunday potentially, but like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's so low.
Yes.
But so you might not be making as much on that, but you're actually probably going to be making more on the food and beverage piece of it. If you offer that food and beverage side of it, you're going to be making more money that way. It's totally true. I mean, it's just kind of fascinating to me how there's so much more opportunity for different businesses, different entities to get into the corporate space and not have to necessarily work every single weekend. I mean, we did a site visit to the Bahamas because we have a incentive that's going, and we ended up going over the weekend, which isn't the norm, but we kind of all said, you know what, this is just going to be, we're trying to get the chief sales officer out there to go. So let's just have some flexibility. But normally, my son goes to University of Oregon. Thank goodness it was a bye weekend when we went out there. So I didn't miss football.
There you go. That's right.
I'm like, wait, has this conflicting with my football game? Because that's not, So, I mean, we just have so much more flexibility. And, when I started ROAR, it was, I wanted to be able to spend that quality time with my son. I knew that I couldn't be a stay-at-home mom. I loved events. Even if, when I was on the corporate side, even when events wasn't in my title, I figured out a way to always do events. And, I get this question a lot from, people that, like, let's say they might be in marketing and, they're on the corporate side, but they really want to get into events. And, they're like, how do I do it? It's like, you go and you talk to the events department and you say, hi, I'm here to volunteer. I want to help. How can I help? Can I, I want to learn from you. And they are happy, more than happy to have the help and get the help. Mm-hmm. But sorry, I completely digressed, but back to, to Tucker, it's my whole world changed with him. I had just gone back from maternity leave and I was feeding him. We had a sales meeting that was happening in Boston and I didn't want to go because I'm like, no, too soon. And so I was handling all of the housing and they called me, my team called super early in the morning. I was feeding Tucker, went into my office because I had to check something on my computer. I had no place to put him down and I put him down on the floor. And I stopped myself after that. I'm like, oh my God, I just put this job over my son. And I'm like, quickly, I'm like, you guys, I got to call you back. And it was, that to me was my catalyst of, okay, yes, I still want to do events, but my job is not going to suck the life out of me.
Yes.
I am still going to have a life. We would, and being in the Bay Area, I mean, we were really, really fortunate because there's, if you're working for a corporation, I mean, I was working in Cupertino and I lived in Livermore. If anyone knows Bay Area traffic, it's awful. I would leave at 5 a.m. and it would take me about an hour. And it's And this was, 19 years ago. Now it would take even longer, but it would take me an hour. I would leave at 4. I wouldn't get home until probably about 6.
Oh my goodness.
So those that have, it's like a couple of clients of mine, they have, they had kids and they moved out of the Bay Area because they're like, yeah, I would call my husband. It's like, are you getting Johnny? No, I'm busy. Are you getting Johnny? And Johnny would be at daycare from like the crack of dawn till, the sun went down. And I didn't want that. And so, I was very fortunate that my husband still, like, he worked for a company. And so I was able to, do this consulting thing and be close to home. I would drop him off at 10. I'd pick him up at 2. Like, I'd get my stuff done. I'm like, this is great. And, then they wanted to hire me full time. I'm like, oh, no. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm
no,
not
thank
going
you.
back to the completion. No. And, then that was me starting ROAR Events. And, then my husband came on like 10 years ago. And so now it's like a family run business. He and I.
I like that. He came 10 years ago. So you're running it for about 3 years and then he came on.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Cause it was so busy. And it was like, okay, he was the one who was going and picking up Tucker because I would have calls and that kind of thing. But I was like, I am not going to take a job if like from a timing standpoint, it conflicted with anything that Tucker was doing. I've never missed a birthday. I've never missed a first day of school, except for one when he was a junior, but that was like family. My mom was ill and never missed a back to school night. Those were my priorities. Like my priority was him. Mm-hmm. And we brought him into the stuff that we were doing also. It's like he learned how to alphabetize, like doing name badges, alphabetizing name badges.
Attaboy, Tucker.
Yeah, I know. There you go.
Family business for real.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I think that, for those of us listening, I feel like you've done such a good job of establishing. I'm just so intrigued by corporate events. And we have also established, though, that if we've been planning weddings for any amount of time, that weddings and corporate are very different. Yeah. I would love for you to take us through. So someone listening right now, let's just kind of talk to the planners because I think anybody could get value out of this. I would love for you to take us through, let's do like your top 3 tips for beginning to understand corporate and then how they can start to transition, not transition fully if that's not their thing or what have you, but more so how can they start to do corporate events so they can expand their portfolio, their revenue, and their repertoire. What are your top 3 tips around that?
Well, the first thing is especially for wedding planners, it's like you already have a Rolodex of potential clients and they don't know that, like, they don't get that. They think that, they have the bride, the groom, the bride's parents and the, like brothers, sisters, the groom parents, all of them work. They all work for a company. Those companies have events. Mm-hmm. So they should actually be reaching out to them saying, hey, yes, we're doing your wedding, but we also do corporate events.
Okay. So reaching out to your current Rolodex, and that includes, of course, your couples, but also those closest to them, the parents, maybe the people in the wedding party, depending on the age of your wedding party. Okay. I love that tip.
But if you're not asking, they are not going to, their minds are so focused on wedding. Mm-hmm. And if you're not asking the question, like, they have no idea that you do corporate events. Also, I know a bunch of wedding planners that, the different things that they're doing the bat mitzvahs, the bar mitzvahs. And then it's funny. One of my students, she wanted to get into corporate and then she started, so she was doing weddings and then she got into doing the bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. And then the parent worked for Salesforce, which is a big, huge company here in the Bay Area. Yeah. And now she does tons of Salesforce events.
Interesting.
Because
Okay.
she was, and all of it is because of the mom who works at Salesforce, and she was doing, Sam's bar mitzvah.
It's not what
And
you know, it's who you know.
exactly, it's who you know. And I mean, I get this question all the time. It's like, how do I get a client? It's like, well, how do you get a wedding client? It's all about who you know, and it's all about your network, and it's reaching out to your network. But another tip is one of the easiest ways to segue into corporate events is doing corporate social. And what corporate social is the holiday parties. It's the company picnics. It could be some retreats, because those, especially the first two, those are very design focused. And for a lot of the wedding planning, there's a lot of design that goes into it. Also, if you're a destination wedding planner and you want to get into corporate, doing incentives, because they're different, yet they have a lot of similarities because there's lots of different pieces.
What is that? Tell us what incentives means.
Okay. Yeah. So incentives these are club trips. So let's say you have a sales team. The salesperson has a quota.
Okay.
And once they meet their quota, they win a prize. And the prize is this all expenses paid trip with them and a guest. So we're doing an incentive to the Bahamas, and basically it's going to be bringing 35 people that have all exceeded their quota, and they are going to be going to the Bahamas for 4 nights and 5 days.
Okay. And you guys are responsible for planning that incentive trip.
Yes. So we're coordinating the travel. So we have a travel partner that we're working with. So we're coordinating with them. We're coordinating with their design team to come up with the look and feel. So think your invitation, your, all the different like collateral pieces that are part of a wedding, your signage, that kind of thing. Then, we're booking the hotel. We're doing a welcome reception. So you can think of that as the rehearsal dinner, except just a party. Mm-hmm. We are doing a group activity, which could be the wedding because you're getting everyone together.
Absolutely.
And then we're doing like an awards dinner, which, could be like the brunch afterwards, or it could be considered like the dinner. So there's a lot of similar aspects to it. And there's lots of moving parts. I mean, with a lot of events, that's the thing. It's, you could say that you're going to do a sales conference or a user conference, but it's not just that one event. That one event most likely has like 4 or 5 events that are all in conjunction with that one large overarching event.
Oh, got it. Okay. So there could be there's like multiple legs of things happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So tip number 1, work your network. Work your network.
Work your network.
Work your network. Ask them. Don't be afraid to ask. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. And and we just heard a perfect example from Caryl, which is one of her, basically one of her students, one of her clients. They did a wedding. They were a wedding planner, and the mother happened to work for Salesforce, which is a huge SaaS company, you guys. Huge. Also, somebody who works for Salesforce runs a podcast with a guy named Jay Bear, if you're interested in another marketing podcast, but we'll get to that later. Cool. But anyway, and now she does those corporate events. So work your network. Second tip, if you're a little bit intimidated about planning full-on corporate events like Caryl is doing right now, of course, she's been in the game for a long time, start with corporate social. Start with these social events she's talking about, retreats, what did you call them? Incentives, parties,
like the holiday party.
Holiday parties. That's a great one.
The company picnics, because they have them every year. When they're doing those holiday parties, they're during the week, and sometimes they're in the December timeframe. Sometimes they go into the January timeframe because there's only so much space for some of these events. but they're very design focused.
What's your third tip?
Oh man, what would be my third tip? You know, I would say to get educated. If you really want to get into this space, then you want to network with people that are already doing it, and that they can actually give you advice, and then get educated, so that way when something does present itself to you, you are able to jump on it.
Yeah.
And it's also not having that fear, and just going for it. I mean, when I did my first wedding, and I'm in a bunch of wedding groups because I actually love weddings because I get so much inspiration from them, and I corporatize it, meaning I take something that I like and then I like kind of turn it on its wheels and have it work in the corporate space. And I had no idea what an MOB was or an FOB. I'm like, a MUA. I'm like trying to figure out like, what are these acronyms? And so, I mean, thank goodness, like I have lots of friends that are wedding planners. I'm like, what is an MOB? They're like mother of the bride. I'm like, oh, but I had no idea. And, so thankfully, I mean, I have no shame in asking a question at all. And I think, if you're hesitant about asking a question, then you're not going to be successful, because you can't just fake it till you make it. I think you really need to be educated. You have to have good people behind you that are able to, like you can ask the questions. And I mean, that's the one thing that I love about our course, because it's all tangible stuff that you can take. It's not a course that's dripped out, meaning, you're going to get this module this week and then this module next week. It's like you get everything like all at once. Mm-hmm. So that way, in whatever situation you have coming in, you can say, like, if someone says, would you like to do a trade show? It's like, oh, let me just go to this trade show module and read up on trade shows. So you have that, and you know how to put that proposal together. It's one of the things that I think it's so important for you to be educated in whatever you're doing. If you're just starting in the wedding business, get educated. I still do education, and I've been doing this for 27 years.
Right.
Because it's constantly changing. But if you have the fear around it, you're never going to know what you're truly capable of doing.
That's right.
And, if you're a successful wedding planner, you can definitely be a successful corporate events planner.
That's right.
For sure.
Well, and as we record this, I couldn't agree more with the education part. You can save yourself, of course we all know this. If you get something like the playbook, you not only will you save yourself time, but here is the big thing for me. You're going to save yourself so much money in mistakes.
Oh yeah.
That's the big thing about education for me. If you can, like Caryl was saying, if you can just go to a module and say, yes, I can do a trade show. I'm going to go to the trade show module, which this just like warms my heart, Caryl, that this course is so tangible. You can go and enact it right away. It's not a high level overview of, what do I like to call it? It's not like it's actually something you can read and then go do the thing. You can implement that thing. It's not, I can't think of the word, but saving time is super important, but also saving yourself money in mistakes is just, I can't tell you enough how important that is. And the reason I feel so strongly about that is because I am a venue owner, and starting a wedding venue costs 6 and 7 figures. It's not like starting a planning business where it's like a couple $100. Of course you can invest as much as you want, but you don't just throw up a website and then you're a planner or a photographer.
Right.
It's 6 and 7 figures. And so if I would have known what I know now, because I had a Caryl of the venue industry, that would have, made my day. But that was back in 2015. So Caryl, where can they find the playbook? I know it's launching soon as we record this and as this is going to be launched. So tell us where we can find it. It's going to be in the show notes, but I want to send them there directly.
So it's the ROARPlaybook.com. So ROAR Playbook.com. And you can hop on the wait list if it's if the wait list is up, or, when people are listening to this, it might actually be available. We also have a masterclass that you can put that in the show notes, and people can go through. It's very high level of like what is a corporate event, takes you through like different types of events, the differences between weddings and corporate, and because there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences between them. So yeah, we have those two things.
That sounds great. And you guys, remember, I will be putting these in the show notes. So if you don't know how to find the show notes in your podcast player, just Google it. Depends on the podcast player that you're using. I can't cover them all. So just Google how to find the show notes in Overwatch, iTunes.
Yeah.
So all the things, SoundCloud, whatever you're using. Caryl, thank you so much for being here today. It was my absolute pleasure to have you. I feel like I wrote down a lot of notes here. And so I don't know, I have like 3 or 10 other podcast episodes for you.
Yeah.
But you can find Caryl over at roarevents.com. She's also on Instagram at Roar Events as well. Right, Caryl?
Yes. Instagram is at Roar Events. Facebook, someone has Roar Events. So annoying. So we are Roar Events Group on Facebook. And then we also have a group, a Facebook group that's called Events That Roar. And it's a free Facebook group that, I think one of the things that's lacking in the corporate event space is being able to show off your work. And so I created this group to really, we can celebrate one another, get ideas, and, like, hey, what did you do? Like, what did you do for your event? Oh my gosh, this looks amazing and great. So we don't have all of the blogs that the wedding world has. So this is just our fun little space that we have.
Oh, excellent. I'll link to that as well, you guys. So you can and see where that's at. Caryl Lyons, thank you so much. It was my pleasure to have you here.
You're welcome. Thank you. This is awesome.
Thank you. Fun. So fun.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.